Let's get into Gloomhaven by Cephalofair Games and Isaac Childres. We're going to take a look at how this all works, and this is so awesome. Hey, this is the McGuire Review, and today we're going to be taking a look at some gameplay with Gloomhaven. Now, I know we've already done an unboxing on the channel, but what I wanted to do now was actually go through some of the gameplay and some setup so we can look a little bit closer at some of the components. I want to hit some things that personally I felt for me as a new player you'd want to do just to kind of speed up maybe your setup and maybe even some explanation around some of the components. And then we'll get into a little bit of the gameplay, and we will do probably like one round of gameplay just so we can focus on the mechanics and how those actually play out. You'll notice over here that I do have some stuff set up. I'll explain why I have it set up this way here in a little bit. I will say that some of this is part of the first scenario in the book. I'm not going to set everything up exactly the way that the first scenario in the book is because I don't want to give all of that away. I do want you to, as a player, experience that when you go through the scenario book. So some of this is from scenario 1. Some of it is set up a little bit differently. I don't have all the models out. But I did leave some things out to show various mechanics of how looting will work, how some ranged characters will work. Let's jump right into the characters. You will see that I got the board and I have 3 characters set up here that I'm playing through from a solo perspective. So if you want to play solo, you can play at least 2 characters all the way up to 4. Now, I have found, after having a few scenarios under my belt, that from a solo perspective, it probably is better to just start with 2 characters and probably play just 2 characters for a while until you really get the hang of the game, and then bring in a 3rd and maybe a 4th. And why I say that is, when you first start to play this game, you will find yourself doing rule checks quite a bit where you're going back to the rule book and you're second checking some of the things that are actually going on while you're playing. As well as when it's the player's turn, we'll talk about how initiative works. You're going to be going through each one of these characters and you're going to be looking through these cards. You're going to be selecting 2. You're going to pick the top action of one card and the bottom action of another card. And you're going to figure out what you want to do with each one of those characters. And I found that the time really does kind of add up. Because normally when you're playing with, let's say, more than one player, let's say you're playing with 3 or 4 players, each player has a character. And the time that it takes each player to decide what they want to do is going to be, theoretically, about the same amount of time. Unless you got someone that falls into that analysis paralysis, which I can say, this game you can fall into. Because there's quite a few different decisions you can make when you go to attack, as well as when you receive damage. There's various ways to negate that damage. And all of that you're going to be thinking through and strategically trying to make the best decision, balanced not only for you, but the whole party. So I will make the recommendation that if you are going at this solo, you probably want to just start off with 2 characters and then add the characters the more familiar you get with the game. Or, you know what? If you don't mind the time, go with 3 or 4 characters. This is what I thought when I first started to play. You know, I need to play with a bunch of characters all at once because then I would experience more of the game and more of the characters. And what you'll find is it's balanced very well. Those characters, if you always just play with 2, will retire much faster than they would if you play with 4. And that's the balancing mechanic. So if you play with 4 characters, you're going to have those 4 characters longer throughout campaigns because it's probably going to take longer to complete your life goal. And we'll talk about that. Each one of the characters gets a life goal. Once that life goal is completed, that character retires. When the character retires, they're gone. They're done. You don't use them again throughout the campaign or the gameplay, which is a really cool mechanic because I find myself kind of getting attached to these characters as you play and you build them up, and then all of a sudden you achieve your life goal and you no longer want to go after the spoils and riches and battle monsters. So you're done. You're out of the game. At that point when you achieve your life goal, there are other characters and other things that are unlocked. So then you'll have new characters to choose from, and you can take some of the base classes as well. So there's lots of different options that you have when you retire those characters and go with new characters. Little tidbit there as you start off, it might be easier if you're going to solo, and I think a lot of people might start this game off from a solo perspective. Just start with 2 characters, get into the game a lot faster, and it will move a lot faster. Right when you start the game out, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to create your characters. So I have 3, as we've already talked about. I'm able to fit 3 characters, the board, and the scenario, all within this small space. And I'll show you kind of how I set that up. So you got your character sheets here. The first thing you're going to want to do is pull those out when you get your characters, and you're going to give your character a name. You're going to set that experience level at 0, being a level 1, and then you're going to give yourself some notes on your gold. So everybody starts off with 30 gold to begin the game, and you'll use that before you go adventuring to get some items so your character's a little bit stronger. And then these sheets have various perks and ways to get more of these like little check marks that in time will give you more perks and more advanced capabilities for your character. Those will come from something called battle goal card that every character is going to get. And when you achieve that battle goal, and that's just for the scenario that you're in, there'll be little check marks at the bottom of that battle goal. Some of them have 1, some of them have 2. Well, if you're able to complete the scenario successfully and do what's on this card, it's kind of a little extra objective. You'll get those check marks, and you can add those check marks right to your character sheet down here below. Once you get 3 of those check marks down here below on your character sheet, you then can give yourself 1 checkbox above, which is a new perk. When we look at our characters here, I went with the Brute, which I named creatively Brutus. I also went with the Scoundrel, which I named Mystic, and I went with the Tinkerer, which I creatively named Tink. We have here with our character sheets just a way to kind of track the details on the character. Now there is one more pad here that is for the party, so you do give your party a name, and you're going to track notes on your party. You're going to track achievements that your party has acquired, as well as reputation, and you'll get reputation through various different things. And that reputation will modify the shop price of items in town when you want to buy and sell. So my party's name is theMCGuiREs, and the location is the Black Barrel. That's the first place that you're going to start on the board. And for that, what you're going to do is you're going to take your board, you're going to pull your sticker sheet out, you're going to get the Black Barrel sticker, and you're going to put that right where it goes. And those locations will be indicated for you. And it does look pretty cool once you get that sticker on the board. And it does stick to the board pretty good. So this isn't one of those things where the sticker just lightly... You know, it's not like a sticker that goes on like a car window where you can just peel that right off. I'm assuming you could probably peel it off this board, because this board does kind of have somewhat of a wax sort of finish to it. You probably could peel it off. I haven't tried, but the sticker does go on pretty good once you put it on. So I will call that out. After you get your characters, you're going to open up those envelopes that are for the characters that you can start the game, and there's 6 different classes that you can start the game with. The first 4 are called out in the beginning of the rule book. Again, these 3 are from those 6 initial classes. And then you're going to get out your cards that are specific, so your battle cards that are specific for that character, you're going to get those out. You're going to get to choose how many of those you want based on your character. So on your character card, it will indicate exactly how many cards you should have. For the Brute, it happens to be 10, or Brutus. You're going to pull those cards out of the pack, and there's going to be 10 of them that are going to be level 1. There's also going to be other level cards in there. You won't use those until your character actually levels up and reaches those levels. And there's going to be a couple cards with an X on the top that are in that pack. And you can use those right off the bat if you'd like. You could substitute those out. You just can't have any more than the total number of cards that your character indicates that you should have. So for each one of my characters, I did select to use some of the cards that had the little X's on them. And those cards are a little bit more advanced and a little bit more situational. So they do recommend in the rule book for a new player that you may not want to use those. I decided to because I've played quite a few games that are similar to this type of game. So I didn't have a problem using those more situational cards. You're then going to select 2 life goals per character, choosing just one of them. And each one of my characters now has a life goal. Once that life goal again is accomplished, that character is retired. And then you're going to get 30 gold to start off with. So right off the bat, once you create your characters, you're kind of in town. And you can use that 30 gold to purchase from an initial starting item deck. Now, when you start, there's going to be a ton. I mean, the deck is probably that thick of items. it's going to indicate to you specifically which items you start off with. You're going to get those out of the deck, and that's what you're going to have to choose from. So it's not a random draw. You'll go through, and each item, it's marked right on it how much they cost. Here's a couple different types of boots. They're 20 gold a piece. There's some potions in here that are 10 gold a piece. Most things are 20, 30, or 10 gold that are in this deck. Actually, I believe all of the ones in the starting deck are either 10, 30, or 20. And you're going to use your 20 gold. You don't have to use it all if you don't want to. But you probably would want to, just to kind of beef up your character going into that initial scenario. You don't really know what you're going to run into. I did. I used my full 30 gold on each one of my characters. And once you're done there purchasing your items, you can go ahead and just put that back. You won't need that again until you come to town. Once you enter a scenario, there is no, hey, I want to take a turn and jump back into town and heal and buy stuff, and then I'll come back. It doesn't work that way. Once you start a scenario and you're diving into the scenario or going through the dungeon, you're in the dungeon until you're either exhausted or the scenario is over. So you either win or you lose. When you come out, then you can hit the town again with whatever experience and or gold you might have acquired and go to the town and do some spending and or selling. So any item that you acquire and you can sell that back to town for half its value. That's another choice that you can make. The next thing that I'll call out is these little combat cards. And maybe it was just me, but one of the things that confused me when I got it out of the pack is this is quite a large deck as well. And it's got all of these combat cards, all right? Now, when you get them out of the pack, flip them over, and you'll find on these cards there's a little number that's in the corner. It'll either be 1, 2, 3, 4, or M. And then you'll find some other cards that won't have any of those numbers on them, and they are curse cards, bless cards, and then there's another card that's got a special little star symbol on it. So the ones that are just blank, the curse cards that look like this, and the bless cards that look like this, and it's a 2X, but it's got a special little symbol on the side that indicates that it's a bless card. Just go ahead and set those aside. And the reason is because those will come out and be used upon different actions in the game. Whether you're cursed, you're blessed, those cards will go into your personal combat deck, which is only 20 cards. Or there's the special cards with those little asterisks on them, and those will come out based on different actions within the scenarios as well. So just go ahead and set those cards aside and divvy up your decks with all your 1s, your 2s, your 3s. That's for each one of the characters, right? Player 1, go ahead and take a deck. Player 2, player 3, player 4. The M is the monster deck. So then everybody will have their 20 cards. So that is one thing that kind of confused me for some reason. I pulled those cards out of the box. I was somewhat confused by that. I didn't understand I needed to split those up. So now everybody's got their battle goal, they've got their life goal, we've got our items to start, we've got our battle cards, we've got our modifier deck, we've got everything that we need, we've got some tokens. Each one of the characters come with these little tokens, and those are basically to track various things that might be on some of the battle cards. There are cards that play out over the course of the round, like every time you take damage, so you kind of track that with these little tokens. So it looks like we've got everything that we need for our 3 characters now. Now, you're going to get your board out here, and this is where your elements are going to go. There's various cards when you play that are going to have a little element symbol on them. And when you see that, what you do is all the elements start in this far left column here. You're going to take that element and you're going to put it all the way over into the strong column. So just put it all the way over. And then what happens is, if you generate one of those as a player, you can't consume it within the same turn, but somebody else can. So let's say Brutus goes first, and for some reason Brutus does something that generates this fire. And then let's say Tink went next. Well, Tink may have a card where Tink can consume that fire. And by consuming that fire, Tink's going to get a better benefit. So that's how these elements work. And at the end of every round, the element's just going to move down 1, getting a little weaker. Doesn't make a difference on its effect. It's just ready to be gone and consumed. And then upon the next round, then it's gone. So once these elements get generated, you want to, as players, use them as quickly as possible. Now let's take a quick look at the playboard here, and I just want to focus on what you're going to do next after you create these characters. Because remember, you're still in the town of Gloomhaven. Your characters are created, we're ready to go. The first thing that you're going to want to do, if you want as a party, is a city event. There's a city deck here. And you're going to shuffle those up, and you're going to take the top one off, and you're going to read what that has to offer. So it's going to be some type of set up. I won't read this. I'll explain to you how this works. So you'll read the front. It will set you up with some type of scenario, and then it will give you two options, option A, option B. You as a party will decide what you want to do. How do you want to react to this situation that it's proposed to you? Once you make your decision, you're going to flip over the card, and you're going to see what happens if you chose option A, or what happens if you chose option B. And then there's going to be either put it back in the deck or remove it from the game. And there's going to be an icon on there that will indicate that for you. So these are neat little events that you can do while you're in town, and they can be good for you or they can be bad for you. Now, once you're ready to head out to Blackburrow, the first thing you're going to do is hit the road before you hit Blackburrow. So you're going to do a road event. So once again, much like the city, you're going to draw that card, you're going to read it, you're going to make a selection, either option A or option B, turn it over, see what happens. I had a very comical one for my first that had to do with a guy basically using wilderness for his toilet. So I won't say anything more because it's actually a pretty comical road event, and I'll let you discover that for yourself when you come upon it. Let's get into how I've set up the board. Now, as far as space go, how I like to set up the board is I'll keep everything off when I'm just doing the road event, and then when I get into that scenario, I'll put the scenario right on top of the board. Now, you don't have to play like that. It really wouldn't matter how much space I had. I probably would still do that because I think it's pretty cool. It's almost like you're diving into the board and then, okay, what do you see, right? So I just set up everything right on the play board, and it gives you a lot more space, and you can still play in a fairly small area. Like, let's say you wanted to travel to a hotel or something with you. This is about the size of most of those little hotel desks, and I can fit everything that I need to for a full-scale campaign right on this table. So that's how I've chose my setup. What you'll find right down the front here are the various different types of enemies that are going to play out in this first scenario. So what you're going to find is the bandit, you're going to find living bones, and the bandit's actually called a guard, and then you're going to find a bandit archer. So you're going to pull those cards right out of the enemy card decks, and there's not just one for the enemy, there's quite a few, and they all have the same name on them, and the reason is you're going to shuffle those up, and as you play around, you're going to select one of those and draw it and turn it over, and each one of them are going to be different. So every round that you play, you're going to do another card. And what that does is it kind of makes that enemy interaction a little bit different, because on these cards, it'll modify their move, it'll modify their attack. So it makes it kind of cool. Like every time you interact with that enemy, it isn't like it's just, oh, this enemy is exactly what's on the enemy card. Because here's the enemy card here for each one of those. And I have the 3 that I'm going to need for this scenario. And it will indicate right on that card exactly how much damage they do, how much health they have, how much move, and how much range. And if they have shield or any type of special abilities. Laid out right on the card. It's very easy. Well, this card here can modify that as well. And they're also going to get a modifier deck just like the player will. So every time you interact with one of these enemies, it is going to be a completely different interaction round to round, even though it's the same enemy. And I love that mechanic because it makes it different. Sometimes with these games, it's like, oh, it's the skeletal wizard again, and you got to fight like 8 of them, and every single time it's the exact same situation. Well, I can fight, for example, this first scenario has 6 for 3 players out front of the bandit guards. I can fight 6 bandit guards, and every one of those bandit guards, depending on how many rounds I go, are going to be a little bit different in the way that I interact with them. So that's a really interesting mechanic. I really like that's built into the game. You'll see here, I go ahead and put my city deck right up top. I've got my cheat sheet card right here. I put my road deck, my city deck. Down here, I've got my bless cards and my curse cards, campaign modification cards. I put the various different monsters that I'm going to fight right down here. I put a little pile of damage tokens here, and I put a little pile of my status tokens right here. So these are those tokens where if you use fire and they get burnt, or if you mobilize them, or you have strength, or you're invisible, all those different types of things that you can do on your various cards or might happen to you in a round. I'll put a little pile of those right there. Again, I've got my monsters that I'm going to be fighting, or my enemies that are right up here. And then I set up my board, obviously, right on top of the map. So that's kind of my layout that I've chose to go with, and I think it works really good. And then you'll notice that I left myself a little bit of space in between each one of these. And that's just so as I play the game and I flip those over, I have that space to flip them over, and all the cards aren't stacking all over themselves. Because again, if you want to play this game in a small space, you're going to have to get creative on how you go about your layout. All right, we're ready to play. So now we're going to open our campaign book and we're going to go to our first Blackborough campaign. So what you're going to want to do is right up top, you're going to look at that and it's going to say requirements. Well, there's none. Obviously, it's the first scenario, the campaign, so there's no requirements. It's going to give you a goal. The goal is kill all enemies. So to win this scenario, you've got to kill all the enemies in the board, and there are quite a few. I won't tell you how many. It's then going to show you what this links to. This one links to the borrow layer, which means you'll go a little bit deeper into this once you complete this first scenario. So when you're done with this, you're going to put a little check on the board on your little sticker. Then you're going to get out any other further sticker if you need one for the borrow layer. You're going to get that sticker out and put it down. I'm not sure if the borrow layer has its own sticker, but whatever this links to, you would get out that sticker and then you would put it on the board at that time. You're going to read what's in green, which is called the introduction, and that's going to kind of cue up the scenario for you. And you're not going to want to read any further than that, because you'll see on the map there might be some numbers sometimes, and on here, like here, number 1, it will reference that number. Only read that once you get to number 1 and you activate whatever's there. And then once you beat it, there's a conclusion that you'll read that'll give you a little flavor text of what happens at the very end. And then it will tell you new locations, and it will list out any party achievements that you might get. Now, when you get those party achievements, you're going to note those on your party pad. And then obviously it's going to list out the tiles that you need for the scenario, as well as the various enemies, if you need any treasure tokens, if you need any trap tokens, tables, furniture, things of that nature. They'll all be listed out here at the bottom of that scenario. And then you'll get all those pieces out and you'll go ahead and put that together. Now, you only want to actually put the first room that you're in. So if you're in rooms and there's no doors, let's say the doors are open, then you can go ahead and set all of that up. But if a door is closed, you don't want to set that up yet, because when you actually land on a door, that works a little bit differently in this game than some others I've played that are like this. You don't have to use an action to open the door. When you land on a door, that's all it takes to immediately open that door. When that door opens, if the round is not over, those other enemies in that room will go ahead and spawn. You'll set them up. If the round isn't over, and the initiative of those enemies is less than the initiative of the character that opened the door, which means if they would have been there for that round, they would have gone before that character, those enemies will get a turn to attack. So it can be very dangerous in opening a door if you're not ready to open a door, because you may have still enemies that you're battling in that round with other characters, and now you have all these other enemies that you could be battling. And how that actually happens is if there's already a battle card out for that enemy, let's say these are all bandits here. So their battle card would already be out for that round. And let's say I open this up and there was just bandits in there. Well, then they wouldn't take a turn because their battle card was already out. But let's say there was a couple bandits and a couple archers. Well, archers wouldn't have a card out yet for the round. That's how it really plays out. It's whoever doesn't have a card out, that enemy would get to attack. And the other stipulation is they have to have an initiative number that's less than the character that actually triggered the door. There are some finer points to how new areas get opened up when it comes to the enemies that are in those areas. And you got to pay attention to that, because that could really sneak up on you and get you when you're playing out this scenario. All right, let's do a round of gameplay. So let's see here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to select our cards. So each one of the characters is going to select cards. I'll just go ahead and start with Mystic here, my scoundrel. And Mystic is located right over here. There is certain spots that are set up on the scenario of where your characters can start. I've chose to start them off in these positions here. I'm going to take old Mystic here, and I'm going to look through, and you can only select 2 cards from your hand here. What you will do is, on that card, you will find a number right in the middle. And we'll have some pictures up close here at the end. You'll find that number. You can see it right there in the middle. That number is your initiative number. So of your 2 cards that you select, you're going to pick one of them to be your leading card. And that's going to depend on when you actually activate in that round. So the lower the number is, the sooner you'll activate. Higher the number is, the latter part of the round you're going to activate. You're going to want to have some conversation amongst yourself as players, or when it's just me playing solo, I'm going to want to have some conversation with myself, really around how I'd want to play out that round, who I might want to activate first versus activating second or third. And once I select all of my cards, then going to turn over the enemy card, which is going to have an initiative number on it as well. I then would choose who I want to use as my leading card. So you do have to choose the cards in your hand before you flip over this card, but you can choose your leading card after you flip over that card. So if for some reason this card ends up being a lower number and you want to make sure that your characters get out there and go before the enemies go, you're going to want to then use leading cards that are much lower, and that might be different than what you would have wanted to do, and it may affect your turn order. So it doesn't always end up being exactly the way that you want to execute it due to these initiative numbers. I'm going to choose a couple cards here from Mystic to start us off. Tink is really good with doing ranged attacks. Let me pick Brutus's cards really quick. And Brutus, I think, is going to end up staying right there. So let's see if we can do some type of a double attack. That would be pretty cool. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, okay, what am I fighting? These are all bandit guards. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to find guard. I'm going to flip that over. And it has initiative of 70. So I'll show you on this card. There it has the initiative, and there's a few things there that modify what's going to go on. So it's move -1, and it's attack +1. So all the guards are going to get attack +1. So if we go ahead and we look at our bandit guards, these are all on a white base, which means normal enemy, if it's on a gold base, like this one that I have over here, that's an elite. And then I call that out right here. You'll see over here, they've got the normal, and you'll see this gold over here, which is the elite. And those do have different stats. So if we look at our guard, they have 6 life, they move 3, but now they only move 2 because our card here modified it. They have an attack of 3, but this gives us a +1, so now they have attack of 4. That's not good for us. And they have a range of 0, which means they have to be right up against us to do any type of damage. So we'll go ahead and set that over there. You'll notice that around this card there's these little slots and numbers, and that's to track the various damage for each one of our heroes. That's a really nice way to do that as well. So we're going to look at our initiative. This is 70, which based on our initiative cards here, we will all go first before the enemies. Now, I could use Trample, which is 72, or Ink Bomb for Tink, which is 74. I could throw that as my leading card if for some reason I would want to go after the enemy, but I don't think I want to do that. I want to make sure that all of my characters go. So with Tink, I'm going to do a leading card of 19. Mystic, I'm going to do a leading card of 4, which is the flanking strike. And with my Brute, I'm going to pick my leading card of 54. So what's going to happen here is Mystic actually has the lowest initiative with 4. So I'm going to take Mystic's cards, and now what I can do is choose, and you'll see each one of these cards have a top and a bottom. I can now choose what I want to do, and it's the top of one and the bottom of the other, or the bottom and the top. You make that decision. And it doesn't mean that because you did your leading card, let's say, for instance, this 0-4, which allowed me to go first, it doesn't mean I have to play that one first and then this one. I can now choose to play them in any order that I would like to. So what I think I'm going to do here, it's interesting because this will allow me to, at the top, I can attack 3 and then add some attack when there's allies that are adjacent, but there's nothing near me. So I'd have to move first to get to it, obviously. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my Smoke Bomb first. And I'm going to play the bottom of my Smoke Bomb, which allows me to pull 2 spots towards me in a range of 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target this guy right here. So he's 1, 2, 3 away. And I'm going to pull him 2 spaces towards me. Now he's in range for an attack. So that card's been used. And now I'm going to do the top of the other card because that was the bottom of that one. And the top of the flanking strike allows me to attack with 3 damage, but I can add +2 attack damage and gain 1 experience when the target is adjacent to any of your allies, which the target is. So this attack will actually be 5 attack, my standard 3, +2 just from the card, and I get 1 experience point. Now remember, I've got to flip over my modifier. So let's flip over the modifier, and it's a +1. So now it's 6 damage in 1 attack, and I get an experience point. Grab my experience, and I can go ahead and up that by 1, put that right there. So now I have 1 experience point for the round so far, and I'm doing 6 damage now to this. So we're going to look and see, okay, no modifiers here. It has no shield. What's its life? Its life is 6. Wow, that's a kill right there from that strike. So this enemy is dead. Take him off the stand, put him down here, and I'll go ahead and put this stand here to be used on other future models. And that would be Mystic's turn. Mystic is done. And what I do is I just go ahead and kind of tap those to the side. And now the next person that's going to go is Tink. I'm going to use the net shooter. The net shooter will allow me to capture upward to 3 models. Net shooter is something that actually works with more of an area attack. So the net shooter allows me to grab 3 people all at once within range of 3. And whoever I get is immobilized, which is really good, which means they can't move on their next turn. And I gain 1 experience point for each enemy that's targeted. So I'm going to go ahead and use Tink to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, since there's 3, I'm actually going to do a battle modifier for every single person that gets netted. On the first one, it's a base of 3 -1. So the first one only takes 2 damage. So I'm going to take 2 damage. And there's a little number on every one of the enemies. I'm going to look at that here. It says number 5. So I'm going to find number 5 around here. I'm going to put 2 damage. And that enemy is also immobilized. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that there, indicating that that enemy can't move. I'm going to go now to the next enemy, and that's going to be 3. Oh, -1, Tink. So that one's going to take 2, is also going to be immobilized, and that is number 6. So we're going to put number 6, immobilized. Now we're going to go right here to this guy. Come on, Tink, pull it off for me. +1. So that's a 3 + 1, which is 4 damage. So we're going to get 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to put that on number 2. And number 2 is also immobilized. So these guys are just stuck in a net. They just got the hurt put on them by Tink. And now I'm going to do the bottom of the other one. So the bottom of the other one allows me to move 4. So what I'm going to do, they don't have any range and they can't move. And I'd have to be adjacent. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1, 2. I'm going to move right there. Because in this game, you do want to keep kind of moving through the scenario. Because you'll find, and I'll show you here in a second, what happens when you're done with these cards. These cards are going to run out. And once they do, they get lost. If you ever get to a point where you can't do a long or a short rest, and you don't have at least 2 cards in your hand, you're going to become exhausted. And that's going to happen because these cards are going to filter into this area called lost cards. When that happens and you become exhausted, your character's kind of out. They're sort of knocked out for that scenario, and they can't be used anymore in that scenario. You really have to balance in how you use your cards, how you take damage, because when you take damage, what happens is you can actually acquire that in 3 different ways. Either 1, you can just take the damage right from your character hit points. 2, you can take 1 card out of your hand and just lose it. Or 3, you can take 2 cards from your discard pile and lose them. So there's multiple ways to balance incoming damage, but you really got to watch that, because the more cards you throw in that lost pile, the closer you're getting to being exhausted as a character. So it is a really fine balance between how do you actually take incoming damage. And that's another great mechanic that I really like. So Tink is now done, so we're going to go ahead and tap those cards. And now Brutus is up. Brutus can move and then attack. Now he does have attack where he can do kind of this leaping cleave. And I think that I might do that. What I'm going to do is the bottom of Trample, which is a leap as well. And it says I can move 4, jumping, which means I can basically just leap into whatever I want to do. And when I land, I can attack for 2 damage, target all enemies moved through. So I'm not going to get any enemies that I'm going to move through, but I can leap up to 4. I'm going to jump all the way over right here and land. And I'll show you why I'm going to do that, because there's a card that I'm going to use next, which is going to help me to target both of these guys. So when I landed, I didn't go through anybody. I can't do any damage, but I can do 2 damage to one of these 2 guys that I'm adjacent to. And so let's look at them. Number 5 has 3 damage, and number 6 has 3 damage. So they're both the same. I'm going to immediately do 2 damage to this guy here, and let's see if our modifier helps us. And it does. That's 3 damage. So 3 damage to this guy would kill him because he already had 3, and his total life is 6. So number 5 is dead. He only has 2. Damn. And that's 3 more damage for that guy. He's almost dead. 1 more and he's dead. And now what I can do is then do the top of the second card. And the top of the second card is called the Leaping Cleave. And the top of Leaping Cleave allows us to attack 3. I get 1 experience, but I can attack 2 people next to me. So I'm going to now just cleave and attack both of these characters. So let's make sure I got my experience from that last one. Give me my 2 experience. 1, 2. And this one gives me experience as well once it's activated. So I'm going to go ahead and attack 3. So this first one I'm going to attack. And it's another +1. That's 4 attack. For this guy, he's dead now. And we're going to go ahead and take him off the board. He is now dead. And now I'm going to attack this guy. And that's a -1. So it would only be 2 damage. And that would be 2 against 6. So we'll find 6 on here. And that'd give that person 2 more. So now he's up to 4 damage. Still immobilized because he hasn't taken the end of his turn yet. But we got some nice damage against that character. And that's going to be all that Brutus can do. So we'll turn those to the side. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're then going to have the enemy is going to take their turn at this time because they had the 70 on the initiative. Again, remember, they have a move -1 and they have attack +1 due to this card. So what we're going to do here is you're going to start with the character that's the closest to someone and they'll be able to attack. If there's multiple ones in the same distance, you're going to start with those numbers that are on the stand-ups there. Start with the lowest, go to the highest. Again, remember, elites always attack first before standards, but these are all standards, so it doesn't really matter in this situation. So we're going to look to see that number 6 Bandit is the closest to Brutus, so number 6 Bandit is going to go ahead and attack. And we'll look here and we'll see that the bandits get an attack of 3, but they're actually going to be an attack of 4 because of this modifier here. So now they're at a base 4. They're going to go ahead and get their modifier, which is a +1. So this bandit right now is attacking Brutus for 5 damage. So now is where it comes into that decision where Brutus either takes 5 damage or Brutus gets rid of one of the cards in his hand and just throws it to the lost pile, or Brutus can take 2 discards and put it in the lost card pile, but Brutus doesn't have any 2 discards right now, and you can't use the cards here that you've used. Those haven't been discarded yet. So in this situation, I only have 2 choices. Either 1, take 5 damage, or get rid of a card. Brutus has 10 life, but it's very early in the game. I think I'm going to go ahead and just lose 1 card because that's a lot to lose all at once. And I'm just going to go ahead and lose this card right here, and I'll put it there. So now it's gone, it's lost. There's only certain types of actions in the game that can kind of replenish those cards out of the lost pile. I don't have any here to start off with this first scenario, so that card is out for this first scenario. It's gone, I won't be able to use it again. So I blocked the damage coming in. Now what's going to happen is we got to make our next decision. Remember, this character is locked in and can't move from the net. So they're just going to stay right there and they can't attack. This character can move, this character can move. Well, this character can get to Tink or Brutus within 1 movement. So I'm going to go ahead and have them move here and attack Brutus because Brutus is a tank. So this one again will have the base of 3, +1 is 4, and will flip and gets nothing. Now this is a special card that has the little refresh on it. So at the end of the round here, we're going to cycle those cards back in every time you hit a refresh, but it gets nothing on the modifier. Now this one's a little bit different when it says nothing. This isn't a +0. This is actually truly a nothing. So what happens here is I got really lucky. That attack does nothing. So this is a special card that says the attack does nothing. So I got really lucky and totally just whiffed, missed Brutus, and had no attack. My last character is here, and how far can they move? They can move up to 3, but they have a -1 on movement here, which is 2. So we'll go 1, 2. Now, they were able to get in range of Tink, so they are going to attack Tink. And that, again, is a base of 3, +1 is 4, and +1 is 5. Brutal. So Tink has to take 5. Tink has a total of 8 life, so that would drop me to 3. I don't think I want to do that. And Tink does have a lot of cards, 12. So I'm going to lose a card here. And let's see. It's hard. It's hard to decide which card you actually want to use. I'm going to go ahead and lose my decoy on this one. So the decoy's out, and I've lost that card. And now the round is over. All of the enemies have attacked. I've attacked. Everything's done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these cards and we're going to look at them. Make sure that none of these cards have the little symbol with the X. If it has a little symbol with the X, it means that that goes right into your lost pile. So there's some various symbols that are on these cards you have to pay attention to. So I did use the trample, and it does have the X, so that goes right to my lost. That's kind of a one-time use unless I can pull that out of the lost pile. The other one didn't have anything, so that goes to my discard, so I'll put it there. So I can potentially get that back with a short rest or a long rest. Let's look at Mystic's cards. Mystic did not use anything that would have put it in the lost, so they both go to the discard. Let's look at Tink's. And Tink did use one, and that was the Net Shooter. That's a pretty powerful card. So that goes to lost, and the other one goes to the discard. We're then going to look through and see, was there any reshuffles? There were here with this one, so we're going to grab these for the enemy. We're going to shuffle those up. We're going to look at the rest of our cards. Were there any other ones that caused a reshuffle? There were not. So we'll leave those right where they are. We'll shuffle these up, and now we're ready for the next round. That card will stay out. They only get shuffled back in when you turn one of those that actually have the shuffle on it. And now we're ready to go into the next thing. So I'm going to stop there with combat. That's what a combat round looks like. What I'm going to do is go right over here and show you a few other things on the board. So you notice that there's traps right here that for this scenario. Now, these traps are right in front of a door, so you do either have to take the damage or disarm them. Now, it happens to be that my scoundrel, Mystic, does have the ability to disarm a trap. So I want to probably save that card until I get there to disarm one of those, so nobody has to take any damage and I can slip through and bust open that door without taking any damage from the trap. If you do have to take damage from a trap, there are rules in the book that indicate exactly, depending on the level, difficulty of the scenario, how much damage that trap will do. Now, when we get into this room here, you'll see there is a little table that's on the board here, and that will restrict movement. You will have to move around that table. It will not restrict any ranged attacks. So you can fire right over that table any way that you normally would be able to be able to hit those skeletons. So let's say, you had Tink or you had Mystic standing over here, and they wanted to take like a ranged attack, throwing some knives or doing a bow. You could aim that down right at those guys and take the shot. You also notice there's some coins on the board. Now, every one of these coins do have a 1 on them, but it will also indicate in the rules how much that coin is worth. For this particular scenario, how I have it set up, each one of these coins is worth 3 gold. And again, you do have to land on that area to be able to loot that. That's something to also pay attention to when you're playing this scenario out. Once all these monsters are dead, you can't just say, oh, everything that's left, I just looted, it's done. Or I just take a bunch more turns and just move around. It's only if I have the cards to be able to do that. You have to plan that out as you're playing the scenario of going through and landing on those areas so you can loot it. And moving through it, you can't loot it. You got to end your movement on that unless you have a special card that allows you to loot multiple areas around you or to loot as you move through. You'll also see a golden chest here right at the end. And when you get to that chest, you actually look that up. There's a number on the scenario with that. You look that chest up, and there's a special thing that's in that chest. It may unlock things. It may give you abilities. It might give you coinage. It might give you items. Who knows what's in those chests? And you don't know until you play the scenario. You see the number. You go to the back of the book. You look up the number, and you can see exactly what's in that chest. So that's a really cool mechanic as well as you go through the gameplay. Makes it kind of fun. You don't really know what you're going to get out of each one of those chests. So that's Gloomhaven in a nutshell. I mean, there's more rules, there's some more mechanics, there's other things, but this video would go on for hours if I talked through every little rule that's in this book or how all the scenarios play out. What I tried to focus on was just how to create characters, how to get started quick, how to set this up, because again, it's going to be overwhelming. When you get everything out of the box, there's a ton of stuff. It will take you a considerable amount of time just to punch out all the chits, bits, cardboard, everything that's in this game that you see. It'll take you a while just to punch all that stuff out. So you don't want to get overwhelmed. Get it all out. Get it organized. Get everything in baggies. Get it back in the box. And then pull out all you need for just that scenario. Get it on the table. Again, I recommend only starting out with 2 characters if you're doing a solo, so it's much more manageable and you'll move through the scenario a lot quicker. Now, I will say, after playing a few scenarios, having a few scenarios under my belt, this game is absolutely fantastic. I was super excited. Go watch the unboxing. You can see there kind of the excitement as I was going through unboxing the game. What we're going to run into, and I'll tell you that it is just as cool, if not cooler, than I thought it was going to be when I got it out of the box. So I couldn't recommend this anymore. Check it out on BoardGameGeek.com. It is already at an overall ranking of like 9.1. I believe it's close to 100 when it gets to its thematic ranking. I mean, it's just off the charts. It's blowing up everywhere, all over the internet. I will say it's one of the best games that I've played of this genre. And I'll tell you, it's like playing a dungeon crawler, but at the same time, you've got the RPG aspect. It's kind of like D&D in a box. It sort of is like that. I mean, it gives you all the stuff that you need to play a full-scale role-playing type game, but it doesn't have that cumbersome feel of having to track every little detail, and you don't need a DM. I mean, the game plays itself, but you get that RPG feel like you would if you were playing something like a Pathfinder or a D&D. So it's just, I'm absolutely so impressed with the way that this has been put together, how the mechanics work together, how seamlessly the game flows. The campaigning is awesome. Love how the stickers go on the board, and as you play the game, the board builds out with more and more stickers. You get global achievement stickers that go across the top. You've got prosperity for the city that you mark at the bottom. It just looks cooler and cooler the more that you play it. And I would even say when I'm done playing this game, I might even frame this board because I'm sure it's going to look awesome after all the stickers and everything's on it when you're done with all the gameplay. And I can't even imagine how long that's going to take. I have no idea how much time it is going to take me to play through this game, but I'm telling you, I'm going to play through this entire thing because it's just so cool. And the character development, how that works, I don't know. I mean, I could just go on and on about this game. All I can tell you is get out there and get it. Now, I know the retail edition of this is going to be coming soon. It has not hit the markets yet, but it will be coming. And it's going to be huge. I'm just telling you. It's going to be huge. It's going to blow up at Gen Con. This thing is literally the best game I have seen in this genre. I just... It's awesome. 2 thumbs way up there. Isaac, once again, you did it. You nailed it. Let's keep them coming. So hit that like, click the subscribe below to join the team, ring the bell. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.